Good afternoon. Welcome to the Health and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, August 28th, 2023 in the City Council chambers. I call the meeting to order. The minutes from the previous meeting, we'll consider placing those minutes from July 24th and August 8th meeting on file.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion or corrections on the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of placing the minutes of July 24th and August 8th on file, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? That passes. Nuisance complaints. Mr. Ashbeck, what do you have for us tonight?
The first one is still with the city attorney, and it still hasn't been solved yet. And the second one, that water, it turned out to be a bad water heater. And then I had one from a lady in a rental unit that had some cockroaches that's not on in the kitchen, a couple of them. I asked her if others because it's a rental unit, a bunch of, and nobody else had any, so I said, that's basically then her responsibility. If it was throughout the house, then all the units had it, then we could go after the landlord, but she was satisfied with that.
Okay, how long has the South Clark Street issue been going on?
Forever.
So when is there a end-all solution to that?
That's up to Tom and him.
Okay.
You know, it's out of our hands now, between Darren and I. He's not cooperating
If I'm remembering the correct one, I think he had made some pretty big strides there. I think Darren was satisfied at one point in time. I know we had issued some citations, and there was some correction, and then we expected to reappear at some time if history proves itself. So, was Tom looking at a violation, do you know?
I'm not sure just what he's all.
Okay.
But he had done some remediation,
Yeah,
some
he had actually
improvements.
done quite a bit of work. I actually saw him
Yeah.
putting in a new window and tidying up, and it was looking pretty good for a while, so I'll have to look around and see where we're at.
He's not meeting Darren's requirements, so.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Ashbeck? Hearing none, I move on to the vouchers, discuss and consider approving.
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion.
Second.
Let's discuss anything on those vouchers that are on there. Any questions?
I don't know which department, but on page 20, there is a Delmore Enterprises Incorporated, LLC, excuse me, tint enforcement seminar.
That is ours. That's coming up in September. And that is the larger part of that fee is the fact that along with that training, we're getting 3 new tint meters. And when we train 3 officers to go to that school. So
It's very good to hear, and aggressively going to be pursued.
there'll be 3 very young officers.
As I stated before, I was walking one night downtown and this Ford pickup truck around the corner and almost hit the gal in the crosswalk, and I would tell you what the driver looked like, but it was 100% window tinting. You couldn't have told, there could have been 100 people in that car, I couldn't have told you. And obviously, that tint reflects on the ability for the driver to see out, and that's probably why you didn't see her coming, it was dark. So,
Well, the intent is, and these young men have earned it, they've been doing good work, and they're going to go to training, bring those devices back, hopefully review that with everybody else, maybe inspire a little bit of activity.
good to hear. I have no other questions.
I have no questions either. Hearing no other discussion or questions, all in favor of passing the vouchers and putting them on file, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? That passes. Okay, general items. General agenda items. Consider a Class B beer-only liquor license for Casa Amigo location at 722 East 2nd Street. This item was not to be discussed. Paperwork was not received in time. But we did receive the paperwork, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And this is the barbecue shop? Am I
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Yep, okay.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
You didn't bring any samples.
We will be having a little sample going on, I believe, in maybe 2 weeks or so. So we'll be having a few people coming in to try a few samples. So we might post on the page so people could come in and check it out a little bit.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Thank
And
you.
this is your second business in Merrill, correct?
Yes, in Merrill, correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of Class B license going to Casa Amigo's barbecue restaurant on 2nd Street, say aye.
Aye.
Against? That passes. Okay. Number 2, consider agent change for Kwik Trip Store number 386 on East Main, 2311, to Holly Hildegard.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any questions to the chief? Chief, any comments?
No issues,
Okay.
new manager at that store. Holly came from another store in Wisconsin, so.
Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? That passes. Number 3, discuss and consider the strategic planning proposal for Merrill Fire Department from Chief Klug. Chief Klug, you're on.
All right,
Back here.
so this is something that the fire department has not participated in quite some time, probably since your sister was on the council. I mean, mid 2000s. And this is something, having been exposed to it way back then when I was on the fire department here, as well as my time spent in Wausau, the value in strategic planning for the organization, very similar obviously to what the city does citywide, but specifically for our department I think would be beneficial. Our plan is to invite internal and external stakeholders to those meetings. We have approximately 4 of them that will be scheduled as part of the proposal we were given from NTC. The $1,300 fee for that I think is reasonable. I don't think we'll have a problem covering the cost for that. So this is something that wasn't sure if it actually required any approval, so to speak, but if nothing else, I thought it was valuable for this committee to be aware of, because you'll likely be invited to those strategic planning meetings. And coming out of obviously the meetings then comes a strategic plan for the fire department. So I think with some of the changes we've experienced over the years, I think it'd be a great opportunity for the community to be educated on what the fire department currently does, as well as in the strategic planning forum, hear what services maybe we should be looking at providing, what can we live without, what can't we live without, and provide, I guess, an opportunity and a place for people to have feedback and input on where we see the fire department going.
This includes EMT, I take it also, right?
Correct. Yep. This is would be a comprehensive strategic plan for the fire department. That's kind of right there. One of the misconceptions sometimes that we have in the community of like, well, it says fire department, so does that mean you guys are on the ambulance? And in our case, it is, because we're cross-trained and cross-staffed.
Lincoln County have a stake in this also?
No doubt, I anticipate specifically targeting and inviting external stakeholders like the hospital, like the county, like the rural towns, elected officials, Merrill Area Public Schools, local businesses. We'll obviously try to cast a wide net to have diversity of those being represented at the strategic plan, but we also want to target some of the ones that we've worked and partnered with probably over the years.
Would this, Chief Klug, would this be sort of a neutral body taking a look at the fire department? Keeping yourself out of it? I'm sure you'll be part of it, but...
Yep. So having been, like I said, part of the earlier one and having some experience after they had one in Wausau and actually help administering their strategic plan for the Wausau Fire Department, absolutely, that's where the external stakeholders, the public, can provide their input. The internal stakeholders, so myself and others from the fire department, essentially kind of get split up amongst those in attendance and hopefully can function as, so to speak, experts in the field. So when elected officials or who's ever participating in the process have questions, you know, like, well, why do you do something a certain way? They're there to answer it, like myself would be part of that process.
Any other questions?
I have several.
Go ahead.
When the last one that we did, I'm not familiar with it. What came out of that was, you know, something that they said, oh, thank goodness we did this because we got that.
Yeah, so actually a couple of things, and if you can, this is kind of the pathetic thing, I think, is that we can't actually find the document. So if you could reach out, and I know you have plenty of resources, Alderman Kaler.
I'm still looking in the boxes.
Yeah, so we started searching on this. Actually, I haven't heard back from Art Lurch, but Art was actually the moderator for the plan. And being a part of it back then, two of the things off the top of my head that stuck out were, at the time, there was already talk back then of a single fire station and what services would look like if they were out of one station. I know apparatus and equipment were another big discussion point and one of the objectives and strategies that the plan identified. And so it's kind of cool now to think back of how, granted it's been years later, but how those two objectives were achieved through the course of several years. So that's where, you know, through going, obviously, while we're going through these plans, you know, at least having some discussions, seeing where things might, knowing a lot of times, right, funding, money is the limiting factor. What should or could things look like if that wasn't the limiting factor? And that's where I think that at least having the document and even going through the plan process itself, I think will be beneficial.
How many other departments have a strategic plan other than the city strategic plan?
We did one as well when Ned was chief.
Okay.
So
In the mid 2000s, when this was, I think at the time, Administrator Klodik's push to do these, I was quite a bit younger then, and
we all
being
were
lower and at least less educated on the process. I think it was viewed as a negative thing of like, oh, you know, this is going to be a way for them to come at us and try to cut and do things. But what it did, though, actually, like I said, in hindsight, actually it became a positive thing because it allows everybody that's participated in it, as well as members of the department, elected officials, just like we do at the city when it comes time to make decisions or at least reference certain things, the discussions have already been had. You know, there's a consensus of like, these are the things that we should do, so that when funding does become available or, like I said, decisions need to be made, there's a document that's been thoroughly thought out and planned.
In the city strategic planning, is the fire department or individual departments mentioned in that? I just know that's a painstaking task, and it was
not
done
specifically.
Okay.
I mean, there may be some references
Yeah, I think
here
it's
and
like
there,
general.
small ones, as participants in some function, but it's not inclusive of their plan per se.
Okay. Here's my issue, is that we're going into budget time and we're gonna have all these extra meetings coming up, which haven't even been set yet. And then this will be a cost more than $1,300 because you're gonna have your stakeholders be participants. That's gonna cost overtime for some of them. I talked to Mayor Haas and he said as health and safety chair, that committee got involved and had 6 extra meetings when they did their strategic planning back in that time. So I'm just wondering if this is the best time of the year to do it.
So the timing of this is actually, to be clear, I appreciate all these questions. We're actually looking at deferring this. This won't be till January. So the 4 meetings, and I've specifically reached out, and Todd, that's referenced in the proposal, I met with him and Ashley came in and we sat down and talked about those things, looking at time frames, number of meetings that it would take. The number of meetings in particular, he thought that we would be good with 4. Compared to where we were back in the early to mid 2000s when we did this, being relatively new and not having anything, we're going to go into this plan with already important things like a mission statement, which we already have from that plan, another big takeaway back then, and as well as 4 years ago when I came back was establishing some core values of the department. So some of the big items are here already, and it would just be a matter of reviewing them to determine if those are still applicable, and then we can move on a little bit more to the nuts and bolts of things. And we would definitely want to be conscious of that, of knowing, you know, we're coming, in this case, we'll be coming off of the budget season, so that already lapsed. Usually January in the winter, things kind of slow down again. You know, we'll be inside. We're anticipating having it at the fire station, utilizing the facility, the training room. And then as far as cost, besides the $1,300, which if needed could come from a lapsing fund, internally reviewing this and looking at specifically of having, like I was back then, volunteers to participate. So it's not going to be an open checkbook for necessarily internal stakeholders, members of the department to come in and make overtime. And even with those 4 meetings, they're going to be capped at 3 hours each. So that it's not an ongoing lengthy process which may have occurred previously.
And my final thought on this whole thing is when everything is said and done, it's my firm opinion that it's going to say we need about 2 extra firefighters per shift. We're inadequate in our staffing, and we're all going to look at each other and say, yep, and we can't afford it. And then we just kind of sit on a shelf again. And I just feel like it may be wasting our time because it's like a wish or something that we can't afford right now.
And I appreciate the feedback, and that very well could be what we come out, but we don't know what we don't know. And so having that, and also successful organizations, from sports organizations to multi-billion-dollar companies, have strategic plans. The city has a strategic plan, so I think it would be counterproductive for the fire department in particular not to have one ourselves, and that's why we're looking to do it.
And I'd be willing to bet a large amount of money that if there's a state law would require it, half the cities, including Merrill, wouldn't have a strategic plan. It really seems when that time comes around, they have to get people in here at gunpoint to get it done. And it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just, it's very labor intensive, and it seems like we spin our wheels and come back to the same thing saying, yeah, we really should do that, but we won't. So.
Well, there's a lot of things that even elected officials may not be aware of as far as happening around us, that once again, having a strategic plan and having those external stakeholders, we may find perhaps some other towns, organizations, associations that are like, oh, hey, that's what they're discussing. Maybe there's some opportunities for us to work together on projects we're not aware of. So you're right. Like I said, we may end up hearing information and coming up with some stuff that we don't think is feasible financially right now. But once again, that's the purpose of the strategic plan, is to at least have a plan together, and should stars align, should funding be secured, like I said, that's typically then what allows you to pull the trigger. So when we talk about the strategic planning of the city and having dirt ready projects, you have to have the plan for that to take place. So that's why we want to be proactive in this, and have a plan so that moving forward, it gives the department, it gives them something to go after, something that we know this is the direction we're trying to move, even if it takes a while to get there.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Thank you, Chief Klug. Moving on, monthly reports. Chief Bennett will have you go on deck this time.
Okay.
Monthly report from the police department.
Sure. My usual report format is attached, and I can take questions on that. And if you don't have any questions, I can move on. I actually have about 3 liquor license issues to run through the committee, just at least to inform you of, maybe get a little opinions. The first one is a Merrill Historical Society application for a temporary Class B. It's going to be at the Expo Center for another wrestling event on September 23rd. The mayor is going to take that direct to council for the next meeting. There is one here from the Merrill Eagles Club for the Labor Day celebration. They want to open up down at their beer stand, and we're going to go ahead and approve that and sign that because they've had that before. They will not make any other committee, and it was too late to make the agenda for this one. So, and the other one is Sunset Hollow Ranch. They were just approved for a wine bistro down here on 1st Street at the 813 building, I believe it was. Something came up with that building. They're not able to do what they wanted to in that building. They're going to move right next door to 811. So it's more of a clerical change to their application and their license location. Nothing else is really going to change. And I would prefer to just treat it as a clerical change, and we'll just do the paperwork. You're all good with that? Okay.
And the Eagles Club was very apologetic when they reached out to me in guidance for Labor Day. They felt kind of dumb that they missed that opportunity. But
it happens.
All the time. Why we have that part of the ordinance. So.
And that's it. Unless you have questions for my report, I can certainly answer what I can.
Where are you at in the hiring process?
We are in the middle, I would say. We're going to finish up with our existing applicants now that everyone's back from vacation. We're gonna finish up with our existing applicants, and I'm probably gonna go ahead and just open it up and put a clause in there that it's gonna be open until filled.
So there's not a big line out the door.
It's the nature of it.
Well aware.
Seems all the candidates that are in the academy are mostly spoken for by some other agency already. So they're full academies, which is encouraging, but they're full because the agencies are pushing it through.
Would we be willing to go back and put someone through the academy?
You're going to wait quite a long time to do that, and there's always a risk of non-completion, and then you're going to eat that entire bill. And we've never addressed a wage while someone is going through an academy either. You know what I mean? We've never really addressed that per se. A lot of agencies have a separate arrangement for that. Maybe let's see how this process goes. How we end up. Maybe have another discussion.
Do you need a motion to vote on the changes? Or?
No, it's just reporting to you, so you're aware.
Yep.
We're on the same page.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to put his monthly report on file.
Okay.
I thought we did them as a group at
We
last
do
month.
on number 4.
Yeah, you want to do them at the end?
I just looked at what we did last month. We can do it again. Let's not be consistent.
Okay, Chief Kuhn, you're back up on deck again.
Yeah, relatively speaking, not huge significant events back in July, but you see those listed on the report. You see once again all of our statistical data. I guess I'd probably just leave it as if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Fair, were you present at the fair? Did you have a group down there? No.
Yes, I was present at the fair. I
Oh.
ended up actually assisting with Saturday night's tractor pulls.
Everything cool, pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There are probably some issues as far as dedicated standbys and standbys for some of our events. That is something that we utilize off-duty staff for, and we've had this year some challenges. We got we're actually having to turn down a request for dedicated standby for some races up in Gleason in September. So that is something that likely we're going to hopefully try to address in perhaps upcoming negotiations. But that becomes, like I said, a little bit of an issue because it kind of goes back to what the community expects us to provide for a service. So we did unique this year, speaking of the fair specifically, was we did have to utilize and got some extra help as far as the standbys down there. We had a couple first responders from area first responder groups that were down assisting with the first aid trailer, and we also had for Saturday, for example, that tractor pull, we had a firefighter from the Russell Fire Department that was able to assist us with coverage for that as well.
Is the Fair Board paying the city for any of these services provided?
I don't believe so. And that has been, I mean, that's one, I'm not sure what the other departments do as far as being utilized down there for services. Definitely becomes a little bit of a sticky situation because we want the service and people don't want to pay for it. So definitely something we can address and look at between now and earlier in August, it sounds like, so for the fair at least.
I mean, it's something that has, you don't want to lose the fair, you don't want to upset the fair, but we, as a city, financially have quite an investment in that event too.
Yeah, and that's what we struggle with too. I mean, it would be very similar to other events that we've assisted with because maybe they didn't pay for it, but we also can view it maybe one way of saying, well, we also know we have a higher population, we have more people down there, the likelihood of the event occurring down there makes sense to have additional resources there, right? Very similar to what I'm guessing you guys do at the PD. So, it's like I said, balancing that of who should pay for what, but definitely be open to future discussions on it.
We're gonna step up our staffing for next year down there. I mean, past 2 years have been incredibly busy down there, especially on the weekends with the
Friday
shows.
night had to be
And we had trouble because we had a throng of activity out in the city. so our people didn't get down there like they should have been, so I think we're probably gonna provide some extra staffing from this point forward. Should we a la carte charge people for that? I think until we can't afford it, or we can't arrange for it anymore, I don't think we go down that road. These are city events, and we should be providing that service.
Okay, any further discussion for Chief Klug? Okay, moving on, Lincoln County Humane Society. I see they have an overload of animals there, huh?
I was there today and donated a ton of food, and they are definitely overwhelmed.
They brought in dogs from Texas.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, it was bad time because all these cats showed up at the same time, so.
Okay.
The mayor did speak to them about having a city representative
I saw
on that
that
committee,
also.
so, yeah.
Were they welcoming? to
They were
that?
welcome to it, but they want to wait till there's an absence or a vacancy
Okay.
before we appoint Alderman Savaki. I mean, tell that secret nomination. So.
I'll make the motion for that.
Now I'll make a motion to place all the reports on file.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Their monthly reports are on file. Date and time of next meeting, looks like Monday, September 25th at 5:15 in council chambers. Everybody's okay with that? Okay, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So
Public comment?
I'm sorry, I forgot to put it on the agenda. I know, I saw the, yeah.
What'd you forget?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment, okay. Is there any public comment?
Suspend the rules.
No public comment. Public comment, second time? No public comment. Okay, now
Now it's Mike's turn.
So moved.
all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Good night.